You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. It is with great sadness and reluctance that I bring to you this news. The age of old white men in the Democrat Party has in fact ended. And why? Well, some might say it's because of their emasculated, whiny, simping voices, but more likely it's because almost every single one of them is embroiled in years worth of fraud, years worth of dereliction of duty, years worth of endangerment. And when you look at the two leading weenie white men governors on the Democrat side of the aisle, which is a toss-up really, the top two, I know that there are three vying for the spot at all time. Of course, you have Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, Governor Gavin Newsom of California. Well, it seems that Tim Walz and J.B. Pritzker may have the most distance to row without paddles. Right off the top of the bat, speaking of Gavin Newsom, Tim Walz did the most amazing thing that you can do as a Democrat in communications. Amid all of the scandals, the fury that he's going on, people are begging him to get on the air and explain what may be $8 to $10 billion in fraud from Somali migrants, things that as they are overturned, they get worse and worse and worse. And wouldn't you know it, Walz's media strategy is go on the Gavin Newsom podcast and complain about masculinity.
But I think this notion of toxicity and masculinity needs to be separated. And I think it's been conflated. And I think we're going to have to work on that a little bit. And I think there is a crisis.
I think some of us scare them. I think I scare them a little bit why they spend so much time on it. No, I'm serious, because I can fix a truck. They know I'm not bullshitting on this. Yeah. I'm not putting this in people's grill. I don't know if my identity is not hunting. My identity is not football coaching. My identity is not, a beard and a truck.
Okay, so that's the strategy to get through this. Now, Walz has also come out and it said repeatedly in little various micro statements, not making it to video, that he is going to continue to ensure that immigration customs enforcement is not cooperated with at the state or local level. Of course, this has been echoed by Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, saying that Minneapolis police are not going to work with federal law enforcement in any way, shape, or form.
And the message that we are sending to our Somali community, to our Latino community, to any community that is being targeted, is that we stand with you. Minneapolis is not backing down. Our police officers will not coordinate with any federal agency that is doing immigration law enforcement.
So this idea they have that they can simply ignore federal law enforcement and that will supposedly make them go away isn't going to work. As Border Czar Tom Homan has made clear time and time and time again, we'll just come in anyway, and if there's anyone on the side of the road that is standing with the illegal immigrants that we suspect or have already been convicted of various serious crimes, then we will pick them up too, because that's how it works. If you are in a house with a lot of people who are doing various drugs during some kind of a bust or raid, the cops take you as well, even if you were not partaking in the spread at the table. But we'll get to the Venezuelan narco terrorists later, because now we get to the uncovering of additional layers of fraud. There's a famous quote from the cartoon movie Shrek in which the ogre says, "Ogres are like onions." And then Eddie Murphy, the donkey, says that he doesn't like that, he's comparing ogres to onions. And the metaphor in this instance is that there are layers, and you peel one layer back and there's another stinky, festering layer underneath it. And that's basically Minnesota at this point. No, not ogres, but the nasty, stinky, smelly stuff. And also the layers and layers of corruption. Minnesota is an onion. The more we are pulling back different layers, the more we find. For example, individual counties are committing what are suspected to be, at this point, massive levels of property tax fraud. There's essentially been a wine cork shoved into the bottle of FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, in which individuals, citizens, independent journalists, just full-on news agencies have requested public information and records from the state government of Minnesota for years, and they've gone unanswered. It's been very frustrating. We covered it back when I ran things at Chalkboard Review. Well, now, all of a sudden, amid all of this looking on of the huge amounts of fraud, and Mehmet Oz saying that there's not going to be any Medicare or Medicaid funding that goes to Minnesota if they don't provide any data on it. All of these FOIA requests popped out of the wine bottle, and now stuff is flowing freely, which is how we get to Sebastian Stoss, who on Liz Collins Reports explains that Ramsey County in Minnesota is essentially committing, at least at this point, estimated maybe $38-40 million in property tax fraud. Check it out.
An information request with the Ramsey County office asking how many NGOs each year receive property tax money. We want the names. We want the exact dollar amounts each one receives. And we also want the audits. Now, on the website, it said that this information request is supposed to take 10 days. It took us 2 months. 2 months of repeatedly being ignored, stonewalled. And it was only after we went directly to one of the Ramsey County commissioners where we finally got at least some of the information that we requested.
Now, here's where it gets rough. So obviously, they're already obfuscating. We already have it on the record that Tim Walz appeared to go after whistleblowers. And again, the legislative auditor of the Minnesota State Legislature. But here's where it gets worse.
So after 2 months, they finally sent us a spreadsheet with...
For those who are listening to the show and not watching it, you should watch the live stream. The live stream's a good time. What you can see is listing after listing after listing of some things that are okay, like a county payment to Regions Hospital or Westside Community Health Services. That's fine. But you see all of these NGOs and nonprofits that under Minnesota state law are not supposed to be receiving tons of money from the county.
Some of the information we requested, and turns out that last year, Ramsey County gave a whopping $38.4 million to a total of 213 NGOs.
That's a problem. That's a problem. Property taxes are supposed to sustain the extra governmental organizations or the outside of governmental organizations in the county. They're supposed to provide a basic level of funding that the state then comes in and backfills. What we're seeing here is kind of a reversal. So what could be happening here is that Minnesota state government is using backdoor grants to throw money back down to the county, which then acts as a trampoline, which then sends that money, laundering that money, let's say, through one paper trail layer and then to NGOs, which means that Minnesota state government may not have been giving $8 billion in fraudulent spending to NGOs over the last couple of years. It could be 10 or 14 or $16 billion. Every single county in the state of Minnesota, every single city in the state of Minnesota, anyone that has any hand on the property tax revenue system essentially now is suspect. Because when state government agencies start bouncing around these various funds back and forth to each other, it creates a paper trail. You add the layer of 2, 3, 4, 5 months of FOIA wait time on this. Really, really ugly stuff. Now, again, not just the politicos here that are getting upset about this. There are actual Minnesota historians and experts on Minnesota as a whole who are now out there saying this is just the biggest fraud scandal in the state history, perhaps in the Great Lakes history.
I think all this will be investigated very thoroughly because there's really a national spotlight on Minnesota and all its problems. I mean, this is a scandal that is by far the biggest in state history.
And it's also bad for J.B. Pritzker. So J.B. Pritzker is already under hot water. Yesterday, of course, there was an alert. Essentially, J.B. Pritzker has ordered the Illinois correctional government through his various law enforcement means to let illegal immigrants who had committed various crimes back out onto the streets so that the federal government couldn't come pick them up from prison.
New report now on sanctuary policies in the state of Illinois. Immigration and Customs Enforcement saying that Governor Pritzker is overseeing the release of more than 1,700 dangerous criminal illegal aliens since the 20th of January, including murderers, pedophiles, and kidnappers, sending them back into neighborhoods and putting American lives at risk.
Now, be careful about using the word pedophiles, my friends over at Fox News, because as we learned today, the Department of Homeland Security got a little little finger wagging from the menopausal ladies on the left. We're going to get to that in a minute. On the live stream, we got to talk about why all of this matters. We know things are fraudulent and stinky, but is it really that bad? Yeah. So radio crew, you guys are going to go to commercial unless you go to the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, let's dig into why this matters for J.B. Pritzker. J.B. Pritzker is already in the middle of a series of federal probes. So there's an ongoing federal probe he's in the middle of from 2018, a forgery scheme involving Allie Jenny Thornley. Essentially, the Department of Justice under the Trump administration has reopened a criminal investigation into a 2018 workers' compensation fraud scheme linked to Thornley, a close associate of Pritzker and his wife, M.K. Pritzker. So this is an active investigation here. It's often also been called a Pandora's box for the governor's inner circle. You know, the kind of people he goes to Vegas and wins $1 million in blackjack with. Number two, he's also under a series of revived scrutinies over Toiletgate, a property tax fraud scheme. It's been ongoing since 2019. Essentially, $331,000 in tax breaks in order to essentially remove toilets on J.B. Pritzker's Gold Coast mansion in Chicago. Things get really sketchy really quickly. And then we get to December 2025, new probe. I talked to someone on the inside of the Department of Justice today. What you can expect in the next couple of weeks is in the beginnings of an investigation, a probe into both Tim Walz and J.B. Pritzker, not for putting people at risk and endangering their safety. Now, I think that's what they should be investigated for. I think prosecutorial discretion is a load of crap. And the idea that you can say, I'm not enforcing that law, is a very bad misreading of the Constitution and how the executive branch in a republic should function. However, what they will be investigated for is their refusal to honor ICE detainer requests. For J.B. Pritzker, over 4,000 of them per his sanctuary state policies, which then resulted in, at December 8th, 2025, an Immigration Customs Enforcement letter demanded the release of 1,700 allegedly violent criminal illegal aliens freed under his administration. So they've said, look, you have these illegal immigrants who are currently on the loose in Illinois. We suspect at least you must know where some of them are. I mean, come on, it's not like Biden releasing children into the wild at the border. You must know where some of these people are. And the answer to that has essentially been radio silence. There's a question as to whether states have the authority to withhold this information from the federal government. Because you not only run the issue of, again, the U.S. Treasury investigating Illinois and in Minnesota with regard to the fraud and the whistleblowing suppression with Walz and with Pritzker, but now you're running into a really disturbing area where if the the state government of Illinois or Minnesota refuses to work with federal law enforcement, how quickly do we get to a Fort Sumter situation? There were a lot of laws and legal precedent that were put into place from the period of Reconstruction, beginning in 1865, 1866, through the 1930s and 40s, in which a lot of the classic state middle finger powers were given up because the old language found new semantics and people started using backdoors to do illegal things. And the federal government wasn't putting up with that anymore. So what you're seeing now is a potential 8-agency probe on J.B. Pritzker. So he spoke today in front of a crowd whining about ICE and said some language that's not going to help him out in some of these investigations.
Over the past few months, the Chicago region has been subjected to a relentless campaign of cruelty and intimidation and abuse at the hands of ICE and Border Patrol agents under the command of President Trump and condoned by the Republican Congress.
Just rotely lambasting law enforcement and officers, saying that, this cruelty at the hands of ICE agents, it is going to fester and foment more violence. And it's a bold thing to say when you have allowed, again, convicted pedophiles back out onto the streets, where we've already found illegal immigrants who've committed previous crimes, who are let back out on the streets, often engage in additional sexual and violent crime. Now, we'll get to that in a minute. We got to bring the radio crew back just for one final commercial break here. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Y'all don't go anywhere.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett cast. Before we get to the rest of the whining and the mewling and the nonsense, the age of the old white Democrat corrupt politician is over. They can't even get themselves out of their own scandals. They don't know how to speak. They don't know how to resonate with Americans. You have Tim Walz getting up in front of the camera and saying masculinity is weird and I'm not a football coach, which I thought he was. He's like, and I don't really identify with hunting, which we could tell the first time I saw him, holding that particular shotgun when he was foul hunting. The new wave of the Democrat Party is just as corrupt. Just the same old nomenclatura that is the Stalin appointing your buddies and pals to the most important positions, no matter the crime or the time. For example, Zoran Mamdani in New York City has appointed my son Lennon, a convicted armed robber who had, spent a good couple of years in prison, to be his law enforcement and security advisor. Of course, here was Zoran answering for that today.
We put together a team of more than 400 New Yorkers who are on 17 different committees. And these are New Yorkers who bring with them both a fluency of the policies and politics of the city, the places that they've succeeded, the places that they've failed.
Okay, I want you all to be very, very well aware that in any political campaign committee staffing situation, it is expected that you bring people who have succeeded in certain areas to be your advisors. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for people learning from their mistakes. I'm all for people, getting their minds right, their hearts right, their lives straight. That doesn't mean because suddenly, all of the sudden that you have converted to something, that now you need to be the leader. The left and the right are both struggling with this right now. But for Zoran Mamdani to go out there and say, well, first of all, there's like a lot of people. I mean, come on. One of them's got to be a convicted armed robber. No. But then suggesting that he picked him to be his law enforcement advisor because he was arrested for armed robbery. That's insane. That's insane. That would be like showing up to a gynecologist's office and them saying, yeah, I've had syphilis more than anybody. It's like, oh my God, no. Not everything needs to be learned from experience. I want to show up to Home Depot. Hey man, I've burned my hand on this stove more than anybody here. And you look and his hand is just blank, no fingerprints left. Nah, that's not the move. The other side of this is Jasmine Crockett. Now, Jasmine Crockett, Ben Shapiro, he's got AOC. All right, you've got Benny Johnson. He's got Ilhan Omar. And we over at the Tony Kinnett Cast, we have Jasmine Crockett, the St. Louis young private school lady who the Tyler Perry Medea movie producers make fun of for her off-color Friday accents that she puts on a different one every week. And, right now is just no different at all. So she came out with her big campaign announcement. It was really big, exciting stuff, big hoopla. It was a really poorly shot and filmed event. This isn't just running for the state Senate. This isn't just running for state representative or county commissioner or, just getting out there and running for anyone. You're running for the Senate. You should theoretically have a crew who knows what they're doing. This appears to be shot by a hyper-caffeinated child that was just given a 1994 flip phone. Look at this.
Of us, especially in this moment. There are a lot of people that said, you got to stay in the house. We need our voice. We need you there.
For those who can't see, the exposure, the color is all wrong. She's out of focus. They've got like the weird teleprompter panels to her left and her right, which really should be at a greater distance away from her. So she's not like Tony Stark in the Avengers looking back and forth between Nick Fury's two screens. No. Also, you don't put the yard sign in the middle of the podium. You put it below the podium. You don't cover up her face and like her neck, like her speaking area with the yard sign. I'm sorry. What she's saying is just as stupid. I just want to point out, in case you ever feel bad about, the shooting or the filming that you do, no one else is any good at it either in this business. It's all embarrassing.
And I understand. But what we need is for me to have a bigger voice. What we need is not only a voice, but we need to make sure that we are going to stop all the hell.
Okay, so she's going to stop all the hell, and she's here to do it. Her campaign platform is, I need a bigger voice, give me money. Which, to be fair, when it comes to a Democrat running in Texas or Georgia or Illinois or Connecticut or California or Massachusetts or Hawaii or Oregon or Washington State, okay, when it comes to any Democrat running for Senate, that is essentially the theme of the campaign. I need to be louder, give me money. Exciting stuff. Parks and Recreation is real. I am quite afraid. Now, does she actually have any substance to her campaign? Well, yes, she does. She has finally something that she's ready to bring to the table because, again, when she was in Congress, she didn't pass anything at all on the economy. She didn't pass anything at all on law enforcement. She didn't pass anything at all on immigration. As a senator from Texas, one would believe that, be kind of important. She didn't actually pass anything in any resolution in any committee. She didn't achieve anything in Congress. And yet, here she is running for Senate. Now, we're going to get to the media interviews today and the new future of the party and the pearl clutching and the menopause and all of that nonsense. Radio crew, we have to send you out to your end of coverage this evening. If you're in Indiana, you have an IU game to listen to. And if you're not in Indiana, well, you're going to stay on the show anyway and you can ignore all of this. So, Allison, go ahead and send them out to commercial. It's the Tony Kinnett cast for you. All right, so on the live stream side of things, Jake Tapper interviewed her today, the hard-hitting journalist Jake Tapper. Every once in a while, he decides he's ready to come out swinging. He doesn't really swing here. He kind of throws like a limp-wristed smack, which, given the low testosterone Democrats we talked about in the first segment, is kind of apropos. But he does kind of push her on saying, hey, you know how you've compared Hispanic people to slaves?
Let me ask you about a quote that you've made that has some Democrats worried about your ability to win statewide.
You can tell it pains him to ask her this. He's like, I don't really want to ask you this. I've already drank, 2.5 quarts of Pepto-Bismol. I'm wearing paper shorts. But I'm going to have to ask you this quote, or someone in the back is going to throw water balloons at me.
In a December 2024 Vanity Fair profile, you talked about, quote, and I'm going to read a lot of the quote just to put it in the context, quote, all the complexities within the Latino community. The immigration thing has always been something that has perplexed me about this community. It's basically like, I fought to get here, but I left y'all where I left y'all, and I want no more y'all to come here.
I love it so much when, because a quote has to be accurate, they can't clean up the quote because this is what she said. It's what Vanity Fair wrote. That now this means that Jake Tapper has to read the quote. And you can tell him starting to get more rhythmic with like the fake Ebonics accent here. And it's just awkward. But anyway.
If I wanted to be with y'all, I would stay with y'all, but I don't want y'all coming to my new home. It almost reminds me of what people would talk about when they would talk about kind of like slave mentality and the hate that some slaves would have for themselves. It's almost like a slave mentality that they have. Now, about the time that was published last year, around 1 million Latino voters in Texas were voting for Trump. Do they all have slave mentality?
No, and that's not what that said at all, to be clear. It did not say that every Latino has that type of mentality.
No, but the ones that vote for people who believe in strong or Trump's immigration policies.
So
I do love how Jake Tapper's like, the ones who believe in strong immigration. I mean, Trump's immigration policies. A little Freudian slip there. Very nice. The really hilarious part is that's not even the worst thing that Jasmine Crockett has said on Hispanic people, saying that, Hispanics who vote for Republican Party or for specific right-wing policies have a slave mindset, which she did say. Here she is talking about why she doesn't want illegal immigrants deported because she thinks that would mean black people would have to pick the cotton again. We done picking cotton, she said.
So I had to go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country, or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands. You're not. We done picking cotton. We are.
I love that. I do. I love that. There is nothing that makes me smile more than watching someone admit exactly what it is they think. And then, because they're in a room where there might be people who are glad-handing that particular point of view, they then They then sit there as though that's not going to be played back later in an unfriendly audience. One of the first rules you need to learn if you're ever going to run for office or be in a public speaking environment where you're going to have to debate, get out there, broadcast or influence or whatever you say will be played in front of the friendliest and the most unfriendly audiences. Whenever you are in public, expect to be recorded and expect that it will be played in the best of light and the worst of light. And that should temper your speech. It's a good policy in practice anyway, but Jasmine Crockett has never learned this lesson. And when you get out there and say, you know what, all these illegal immigrants, these Hispanic people, these brown people, all they're good for is cleaning my room and mowing my lawn and picking my crops. We done picking cotton. As though growing up in the rich suburbs of St. Louis at the private school, the extracurricular activities were state-mandated cotton picking. They weren't. She's full of it, as usual. But again, when you look at the substance, because she's running for the Senate, all right? The Senate, the upper nobility class of the United States, you would think that she has some policies, some things that Texas people want. The Texans, they've got things that it is John Cornyn's not providing, Jasmine's gonna provide. Clearly, Colin Allred believes in it, the last guy that got spanked by Ted Cruz, because he's now dropped out of this Senate race and he's gonna go run for the 33rd House somewhere. But Jasmine Crockett, what are the substantive things? Like, what is it that she's bringing to the table? It's not much.
Now, Christmas is around the corner, and after a whole year of office with Trump, what has he done? Absolutely nothing to fulfill his number one campaign promise, which was to bring down cost. Well, prices have tripled since Trump became president, and we're all feeling it.
You have never proposed a single economic policy, despite being in the House of Representatives. The power of the purse rests first in the House. The House writes the budget. If Trump is so big, bad, and stinky and evil, where's the proposal, Jasmine?
Well, guess what, y'all? Under Trump 2.0, people are still unemployed.
Unemployment is down.
Or forced to work multiple jobs.
You are not forced to work multiple. The idea that because of the budget in Congress, you yourself, you as an American, are forced to work multiple jobs does not translate, does not correlate. That is a massive multi-layered issue. The idea that Republicans are sitting there going, yes, they're going to have to work all kinds of jobs because they won't raise the minimum wage at McDonald's is a stupid thing to say. And by the way, with gas prices and oil prices, as we talked about yesterday, decreasing quickly, the reliance on additional income to pay for things like transportation and groceries is decreasing. Again, what are you proposing? What bill do you have ready to go?
And after all the cuts to SNAP, the rising cost of everything except wages.
Okay, so the cuts to SNAP, a work requirement? Oh no. There's no policy. There's nothing of substance. You're still running in the legislature. If you want to be an executive, run for the executive. You want to be an on-camera broadcaster, be an on-camera broadcaster. No idea what she's doing here. And by the way, the rest of the Democrats, they don't care. Their idea is the same as it was when we looked at AOC. It's the same as it was when we looked at Kamala Harris. It's the same as it was when we looked at Hillary Clinton. She's got a big social media strategy. She's new. Here's Ro Connor from California. We don't care what she says. She's new.
Is she the kind of candidate that the party should get behind to take back the Senate?
Sure, she's new. You know what we don't need? We don't need 1990s or 2000 folks leading us into the future. We need a new generation.
By the way, in the Democrat side of the aisle, it is in fact true that the approval rating for those old white guys, right, that have been there since the early aughts, their approval is way down in the doldrums. But on the Republican side of the aisle, it is in fact, believe it or not, some of the older members of Congress that have remarkably high approval ratings in the Senate. Chuck Grassley's got a really great approval rating. The idea that just the young hotshot is what everyone is looking for is not in fact the case. The Republican with the lowest approval rating in her district, who is now getting ready to leave office because she has made exactly zero friends, she's burned every bridge, is Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is not super ancient of the old model. We'll get to that here in just a minute. Before we get to the end of the Senate, we got to talk about the core issue that a lot of voters are concerned about, and there are some steep concerns. Mostly around, believe it or not, mostly around whether or not the Senate is actually going to start getting some of the judges, some of the prosecutors, confirmed. It's December. Why are we still dealing with confirmation stuff? We're going to talk to Rob Bluey about that here in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast with special guest Rob Bluey.
You heard the music, so we bring on Rob Bluey, president of the Daily Signal, getting into a little bit of that Good Hill stuff. How are things in the sewer of Washington, D.C.?
Well, frigid today, Tony. It's quite cold in the nation's capital, and I think everybody on Capitol Hill is probably itching to get back home to their districts. It's not as if they've spent a lot of time there this year. They certainly have, but there are a few things that they need to clear before the end of the year, and there are some pretty basic functions that Congress typically does at this time of year, and we'll see if they can get them done with the narrow majorities in both the House and Senate.
So that's one of the things I wanted to get your opinion on. President Trump caught on the hot mic, basically unsatisfied to the extreme with the Republican Senate.
Hey, Jeff, you know I cannot appoint anybody. Huh? I can't appoint anybody. They're unplugged. Everybody I've appointed, their time is expired. And then they're in default. And then we'll lose.
Getting a lot of these appointees nominated and confirmed, having attorneys resigning at the end of that 120-day mark doesn't look good for the administration. And maybe going after Hawley, some conversation about blue ticketing or blue stamping, blue checking. What's going on in the approvals process?
Yeah, so a few things there to explain. Number one, during President Trump's first term, certainly there was a significantly faster pace when it came to confirmations, precisely because the Democrats were not standing in the way as they are now. They were allowing votes to go through for certain nominees, whereas now they're insisting on maximizing all of the time that is allotted for senators to consider these nominations, which has resulted in Republicans now packaging these nominees into one big bundle. But it takes some time, and if you get something wrong, as they did last week, it can drag out to a degree. And President Trump, I don't think, has any patience for that because these are individuals that he wants in their job, making sure that they are executing the administration's policy. Specifically when it comes to those blue slips. Yeah, so it's a policy, longstanding policy in the U.S. Senate where the two home state senators, which in some cases are two Democrats, get to have a say over who some of the nominees might be for some of the appointments. And that has not necessarily been the direction that President Trump has wanted to go. He's not somebody who oftentimes will respect that tradition that exists, and for good reason. He wants to drain the swamp, as he so often says. And so that's some of the issues that are going on in the Senate. I'm hopeful that Senator Thune and the Republicans can push some of these through before the end of the year, because let's face it, we're coming up on the 1 year mark of the inauguration. That's a long time to wait.
Yeah, that's one of the things that maybe I'm, as we've joked about before, maybe I'm uncouth, maybe I'm just some, dumb bum hick Hoosier, but I just have a little bit of an issue with all of these big national proceedings being held up by, well, according to Robert's Rules of Order, you need a blue slip procedure so the home senator from Nebraska gets to talk for 3 hours. Why? There are U.S. attorneys that need to prosecute not just individuals from prior administrations, but violent criminals who have committed disgusting crimes right now. And we can't because, well, her 120-day temporary setup is up. This seems like nonsense to the American people. And that's going to have some 2026 implications.
It certainly is. I mean, you saw the frustration from President Trump during the government shutdown when the Senate voted repeatedly, and Democrats consistently withheld their votes for Republicans to block them from getting the 60 votes needed to overcome that hurdle, the filibuster as we commonly know it. And President Trump said, "Get rid of it. I've had enough. Just do it." The Democrats would do it if they were in charge. I have no doubt about that. But it's one of those things that consistently and historically has allowed conservatives to block some pretty bad pieces of legislation, whether that be during Barack Obama's presidency, Bill Clinton's presidency, Joe Biden's presidency, go back even farther than that. Certainly Democrats would have wanted to strip away some Second Amendment rights. They probably would have wanted to impose cap and trade climate policies. They would have, done some, pro-union, pro-labor policies. So there are all sorts of things that Republicans point to and remind the president of reasons why we've kept some of these rules in place. However, when it comes to nominees, we are in some uncharted territory. There used to be some more bipartisan agreement when it came to putting these individuals in positions of government, whether that be a judge or whether that be an administrative appointee. And the Democrats have thrown that entirely out the window. And they said, we're going to do everything we can to stymie the president and his agenda.
So if you actually have a Republican Senate, who I remember because Trump wanted to get a lot of these appointees confirmed during the shutdown, said, let me just, swing on through, confirm them all during the shutdown. And I remember seeing that the Republican Senate said, hang on, just trust us. We're going to get these people confirmed. And now we are weeks and weeks and weeks after this shutdown, and we're getting to the end of the year. And I'm looking at all of these high profile cases. When you have someone who body slams federal agents, and the individual prosecuting her says, well, I have to step down from this prosecution, not because there's anything wrong with the prosecution, because the Senate didn't get off its butt and confirm her. That's a bit of an issue for me. And it's an issue for a lot of Americans. I know we've written on it extensively at the Daily Signal, because there are things that need doing. And just counting on having control of the House and the Senate for the next 2 years after the midterms, it's a kind of gamble that makes me uncomfortable.
It's a big gamble. And you know that if the Democrats gain control of the House, they're likely to start impeachment proceedings against President Trump almost immediately.
Likely,
I don't think there will be any.
Al Green's itching. Is those dastardly deeds.
Exactly.
For dastardly deeds proposed and dastardly deeds done.
I don't think it'll go anywhere in the Senate, but if they gain control of the Senate, you can expect that the president's the appointments and nominees that he's making will grind to a complete halt. Can you see a Democrat majority leader in the Senate advancing any judges? No. I mean, I think that they would go to the extreme and try to block almost all of the appointments from happening. And so that speaks to the urgency that you're talking about. Now, Tony, there was something in the past that a president could use. It was called a recess appointment. Now, that was not a permanent appointment, but they were able to put somebody in place. In fact, Hans von Spakovsky, who's a friend of your show and of mine and the Daily Signal, a frequent contributor, was one of the last recess appointees made during President George W. Bush's administration. It was after that Harry Reid, the Democrat majority leader in the Senate, put an end to that. And he said, I'm not allowing it anymore. And ever since, we've been in a situation where the president hasn't had that ability. And so there are steps that the Senate could take. And you're right, now is the time to take that action.
So, I mean, we're seeing a lot of that kind of era of American bureaucratic governance come to an end. I mean, we're seeing the Supreme Court argue Humphrey's executor, which sounds like the epitome of the Robert's Rules of Order nonsense. Well, according to Humphrey's executor, you see this kind of silliness that Congress can create these independent agencies that the president can't touch, which again makes no constitutional sense. That bureaucratic era of American governance from the end of the Cold War, well, from FDR and Wilsonian Americana all the way up through the Biden administration, seems to be coming to a close. Are we going to see some of these administrative agencies torn down the rest of the way here, especially when it comes to maybe just longstanding rules we've had just because?
I think that based on the arguments at the Supreme Court yesterday, it appears that they are heading in that direction. When you talk about the independent agencies, we're talking about things like the Federal Trade Commission or the Federal Communication Commission, which in the case of the FCC, led by a Trump appointee, Brendan Carr, and the other one and other agencies that might be there might be implications for this in this case. You have individuals who were appointed by maybe a Democrat president who don't want to step down. And right. the president is saying, no, these agencies should follow the guidelines that I'm putting out from my administration. And so
executive cohesion, right.
Exactly. And this is what the Supreme Court will finally decide and offer some clarity for. And yes, you're right. A lot of these were set up at a time when the experts knew best. And we were going to entitle this expert class in the United States to make a lot of these decisions. And I think that the American people said, no, the experts don't know best. And we want to make the choices ourselves through the representative that we send to Washington, in this case, President Trump.
You can only see so many grown men in skirts before you recognize maybe they're not an expert on health and human services. You can only see so many consistent, repeated failures at law enforcement agencies before you're like, man, I think that the experts in this situation are a bit topsy and or turvy. It really is wild to look inside DC from the outside and see people who think that these academic technocrats who believe they are so special are just the emperor without any clothes.
It is true. They have operated that way for a long time. I mean, I think Americans saw it firsthand during COVID when a lot of the people who were at the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, and other organizations like that made recommendations that went against the common sense of so many individuals. And so this is one of the things that I think, catapulted President Trump back into the White House and put him in a position where he could clean things up and hopefully make some changes for the better, where he's giving the power back to the people and not necessarily relying on these agencies to impose the rules and regulations that govern our lives.
It really puts a good amount of perspective on just how important it was that he was able to nominate and confirm the Supreme Court justices that he did.
Absolutely. I think so. And Tony, going back to your point, who knows if he could do that today, given the state of the Senate. So I'm glad he got it done in his first term.
That's true. Rob Bluey, president of the Daily Signal, thanks for giving us a little bit of the insight, as usual, into that wonderful, smelly heap of garbage, Washington, D.C.
Thanks, Tony.
Now, I do have some good news to report to you, and this came after we finished that interview. 3 justices did end up getting confirmed today. Robert P. Chamberlain, the United States District Judge for Northern District of Mississippi, William J. Crane, the United States District Judge for Eastern District of Louisiana, and James D. Maxwell II, also a United States District Judge. And I'm sorry, I'm not quite clear. Producer Daniel, shoot me a message. Which district did he get appointed to? That was right before the show. The Senate has finished up. All 3 of those are along party lines. So a 51-47 vote. And at this point, you are going to have to see something shift. The Democrats in the Senate are focused on something entirely different. They are focused on going after the Department of War. Now, that said, particularly, the younger members of the Democrat Party are not focused on the Department of War at all. The younger Democrats are focused on defending the oppressed crowds of the United States, illegal immigrants, just brown people, very ambiguous, whatever that means. Maybe they're from New Delhi, maybe they're from down the street, maybe they're from Central or Southern America. No one has any idea, just brown people. And then LGBTQ plus 2IA86753009 people. And liberal white women are offended on behalf of all of these. So the older Democrats in the Senate, they're mad at the War Department. We'll talk about that later. Right now, though, there is this very strange campaign that is still somehow dragging itself through broken glass in the public view. And that is the defense of creeps. The defense of creeps. The left side of the aisle in the United States has done its darndest to just defend creeps by being offended on behalf of everyone for the last couple of decades. So there's a moment in the movie Ocean's 12, a popular movie, bunch of stars, the sequel to Ocean's 11, in which Matt Damon asks a couple of guys, because they're going to commit a heist on a guy who has a phobia of leaving his house. And one of the guys in the heist calls the old man they're going to rob from a freak. And Matt Damon goes, do we want to be the organization that labels people with that word? Like, freak? And you could tell the winds, in fact, were changing. And the idea that we were going to take anything and everything and be really, really offended. And this started to include some really weird and bizarre behavior. And there was this idea that as long as, maybe you had these like really weird fetishes and like weird things that you were obsessed with. And at first it was, well, as long as you do things in your basement alone, away from people, then fine, whatever, you have the freedom to do whatever. Then these people said, well, if it's good enough for me to do in the privacy of my own home, it's good enough to do everywhere else. A comedian named Sebastian Maniscalco, who's an excellent stand-up comic. He had a pretty good segment on this phenomenon that the left would come to embody. This is about 9 years ago. It's one of my favorite segments by him. And it's this idea of people who have made their entire personality, because of the internet and because of this societal push, their really weird, creepy stuff that Man, there was a time people used to keep this to themselves.
This internet, there's something for everybody, right? You got some weird fetish, some weird thing you do? Look at how weird it just got in here, huh? Some of you are into this type of behavior. But if you like something weird, if you're an adult, you like to dress up as a baby, there's a website for you. 30 years ago, if you like to dress up as a baby, nobody knew that. You did that in the privacy of your own home. If you ever came out of your house with a diaper on, your neighbor would go, look at this shit. Call the FBI, get this shit to the neighborhood, right? It was handled. But today, just throw it up in the Google. I like to dress up as a baby. Next thing you know, they're at the Hilton on a Saturday with 863 people that like to do this shit.
And in fact, that is spot on. That was 9 years ago. And we are still very, very much here. Now, it gets creepier and weirder because the more we learn about some of the individuals who have committed some of the most violent, heinous acts over the last couple of years, just as often now as you hear this person was known to authorities because of erratic behavior line, the known to authorities line, which has come to accompany so many of the mass shooters or attempted assassins or successful assassins. Now you also hear there's some weird thing about them. They were obsessed with furry pornography. They were obsessed with polyamory and they were transgender and they were going through this and that and the other, this weird sexual stuff. We learned that about Charlie Kirk's assassin. Oh, he had a transgender roommate who was really into furry pornography. An attempted political assassin who was really into all this other weird stuff on DeviantArt. Now here we go, yet another case. According to the New York Post, the DC pipe bomb suspect, Brian Cole Jr., the guy whose father's business that he worked at, spent the entire first Trump administration going after the DHS over ICE and illegal immigrants in the 2016 era, then went and planted 2 pipe bombs, one outside the RNC, one outside the DNC. According to the New York Post, he had a secret online life obsessing over My Little Pony stuff. He wrote My Little Pony fan fiction and all of the weird, very creepy, hypersexualized junk that goes on with that very, very, very disgusting, weird neckbeard fandom online. Because of course. And I kid you not, there are already progressives that are coming out of the woodwork, coming out and saying, well, actually, not all people with these kinds of very weird things. Again, it just so happens that these individuals that come out and commit these heinous acts always have some very weird, creepy fetish. Some weird thing that 10, 20, 30 years ago, like, you stay the heck out of public with that crap. We don't want that around our families and our children. No, thank you. Now it's a feature. It gets a spot in the Pride Parade. It gets a special stripe on the flag. Target gives you a little section of the store to shop in. And it's really, really weird and creepy. And if you come out to suggest that this is bad, then Tim Walz's daughter comes out in that school Marby liberal voice, like that one teacher that every other teacher in school hates, and gives you a lecture that you just don't understand about love and acceptance and love. We know love. You know, unless we're telling the illegals to go pick our crops, we're all about love over here. Here's Tim Walz's daughter trying this routine.
Oh, Dawn, it is so clear that your dad does not love you. Or if there is any love there, it's not for your compassion like my dad loves me, but
there's like this very weird academic affluent way that they insult people. These liberal menopausal or young angry women that are always either no one loves you, like your parents didn't love you, or like a very weird obsession with thinking about their genitals and how much sex the other person has. It's very, very weird. No one seems to think about other people having sex more than the obsessed with the Handmaid's Tale crowd, or like the love of other people's parents. By the way, that is called projection. No one will ever love you like my dad loves me. No one loves you. That's how I'm gonna, I gotcha.
Instead, you're cruelty. And that's not love.
That's not, no.
That's not love.
No, my Starbucks cup said that love is the 4-letter word, and I think that's misogynist.
I genuinely feel sad that you and your family feel the need to degrade and put down large swaths of the country. And
a little fun tip here for those who are watching and not listening. She keeps moving her hair behind her ears. They have these really cool thing called headbands. They've been around for a while, made out of plastic, wood, glass if you're risky, crystal if you're fancy. You can put it here and it keeps the hair behind the ears. I know, because my toddler keeps snapping them in half, and it really frustrates me. But anyhow, this toddler of Tim Walz's daughter, who is school-marmingly lecturing everyone in this, no one loves you, no one's as accepting.
Attempt to make yourself feel better.
Oh.
My family and I will always be richer than yours. Always.
I don't know what that has to do with anything. Thank you. I honestly wouldn't mind if people drove by yelling about her total mental capacity to her either. Don't do that. But I just want, the whole family to get, the love. She's so concerned about the love and the attention. It's good to share. So that particular vibe has come out in a couple of other ways. So the Department of Homeland Security, again, in this frame of talking about illegal immigrants, people on the left, in this social caring left, very, very deeply concerned. So the Department of Homeland Security posted, disgusting and revolting, pointed out that the Salt Lake Tribune has completely lost the plot in their indefensible spin for a sodomite and child abuser. So the Salt Lake Tribune had covered, quote, a Utah soccer coach was following exactly the process to get legal status, but ICE arrested him anyway. So there's just this guy, this soccer coach, this Maryland father, just this, this innocent, lovely person, never done nothing to nobody. And they were following the legal process. Well, according to the actual records, Yair Celis Lesuona has a criminal history for sodomy of a child and sexual abuse of a child. Lesuona entered the U.S. on a tourist visa in July of 2007 that required him to depart by January 21st of 2008. So like most illegal immigrants, ignored that completely. On his green card application, he listed his occupation as a youth soccer coach. While illegally overstaying his visa, he was arrested for these heinous crimes in which he raped children. And then the predator had been placed in removal proceedings. So how does the Salt Lake Tribune cover that? Well, this soccer coach was following the legal process. And so Department of Homeland Security called him a sodomite, because he is, and was abusing children. And I kid you not, the lesson that leftists are pulling out of this are that the federal government has used the term sodomite. Won't anyone think of the gay people? Won't anyone think of those who have alternative forms of sex? Someone out there, you're slut shaming, you're fetish shaming. How dare you? How dare you question someone's weird habits? Okay. All right. There's this weird kind of faux empathy that we've talked about quite a bit. Allie Beth Stuckey has probably one of the best reads on this. Her book, Toxic Empathy, excellent. Highly recommend it. Molly Hemingway over at The Federalist has also done extensive and excellent work on this. But the core fake empathy that the ladies on the left embody and make their entire personality, they equate policing societal norms, a normal way to act, a normalcy that should be pursued. If you have a learning disability, that may not be a good thing. We try to provide things so that you can overcome that learning disability. Ladies on the left say, no, that disability actually makes you more special and wonderful, and you should pretend that's just as good as being neurotypical. They say it's neurodivergent. If you're overweight, you should be body positive. If you're LGBTQ+2IA, you should mimic all of the things that straight couples do to make yourself feel just as normal. See, that's the whole point. And it's that idea that if you police societal norms and you say, you know what, this normal thing, actually, it's pretty good. They equate that to destroying society through Nazi fascism. Case in point, Ketanji Brown Jackson, the equity hire of the Supreme Court, lost her mind in oral arguments today. What did she lose her mind doing? She lost her ever-loving mind over the idea that the President of the United States has the constitutional chief executive authority over executive offices. And she starts going shrill, saying the end is near. She starts Paul Revering through the Supreme Court, hikes up the robes and the skirts and starts running through, the Trump is coming, and he's going to fire all of the scientists, all of the experts. Ketanji Brown Jackson, do it.
Some issues, some matters, some areas should be handled in this way by nonpartisan experts. That Congress is saying that expertise matters with respect to aspects of the economy and transportation and the various independent agencies that we have. So having a president come in and fire all the scientists and the doctors and the economists and the PhDs and replacing them with loyalists and people who don't know anything is.
So I do love the pro-clutching over this, while at the same time, J.B. Pritzker, Tim Walz, Gavin Newsom, Zoran Mamdani are in trouble for exactly that. Number two, when you say that I should trust all of these doctors and experts, and it's a dude in a dress, when Rachel Levine is standing up there saying that don't call anyone fat, don't talk about weight loss, that's wrong, that's evil, that's fat phobic. Really, you can go have, LGBTQ plus rallies and burn down cities during COVID because COVID stops when you're protesting for the left. Get this mRNA shots just the same as an inoculation vaccine, even though it's literally not. And then when they're wrong, they come out and act like that never even happened. Is there any wonder people don't trust the institutional experts anymore? The ones that she's clutching pearls and crying over, like she just finished the second tape of Titanic.
Actually not in the best interest of the citizens of the United States. These issues should not be in presidential control.
So her entire argument is because she doesn't like who is being fired, the president shouldn't have the power to fire them. That's not how the Constitution works. The Constitution is made so that no matter whom is filling their role in the Constitution, that they all act under the same document, under the same rules. That is why subjective analysis of the Constitution is stupid. When everyone has their own little special Oprah Winfrey, Joy Behar truth on the matter, it's chaos, because then there's no uniformity, there's no subjectivity, there is no justice. The reason justice is blind, the reason every statue of justice portrayed in the classical Greek and Roman style in state capitals and law offices, etc., has a blindfold over her as she's holding up the scales, is because justice is not supposed to make distinctions based on who is in front of them. The law applies to all objectively, not subjectively. And in case you assume that this is only on the left side of the aisle, the former weird side of the right, the identitarian side of the right, has this issue as well. Now, on the bright side, the right at large appears to be rejecting this nonsense. It's why you see Marjorie Taylor Greene now running over to CNN and crying that, who's got it hard in the Republican Party? Women have it hard. I'm being mocked because I'm a woman.
It is extremely frustrating as a rank and file Republican member in our majority, our Republican majority, that many of us women are not taken seriously, and our legislation is not taken seriously.
Your legislation is not taken seriously because you submit it in crayon. It is unconstitutional, and it is thrown out of the committee because it ignores not just rules that have changed or laws that have changed in the last 10 or 20 years. It ignores very basic U.S. civics lessons. You can't write laws. That's why your legislation is thrown out. And there are a lot of women in Congress who are respected. There are a lot of women in the administration who are respected. I do not know of any Republicans who are currently slamming Carolyn Leavitt because she is a woman. Carolyn Leavitt is incredibly competent and articulate, and when she gets up to the press secretary's podium, she knows what she's doing. Pam Bondi is not criticized because she is a woman. It's because when she makes certain distinctions and decisions at the attorney general level, people agree with them or disagree with them. Harmeet Dillon is an immigrant family woman. And she is one of the most respected members in the administration because of her merits and her character. But the almost no longer representative of Georgia wants you to know the real reason that people don't like her getting out in front of the American people and smacking herself in the head with a novelty hammer is because she's a woman, as though it's unseemly. If a man smacked himself in the head with a hammer, everyone would love him. No.
I'll give you an example right now. Mike Johnson promised me that one of our it's in my bill. It's called Protect Children's Innocence Act. It's a key piece of legislation that is one of President Trump's top campaign promises, and that's to protect any child under the age of 18 from gender-affirming care.
Okay, so she says, well, I wrote this bill, and it's gonna make gender-affirming care illegal across the United States. The bill's written poorly. There, I saved you the read. It's written poorly. It ignores how health code in the United States and the relationship between the federal government and state government works. It also doesn't include teeth. She's completely left out of her bill insurance companies, which, pulling the insurance debacle nightmare spaghetti bowl out of the American healthcare system is like trying to hold a Halloween skeleton together without rubber bands. It just ain't going to happen.
Our position is let these kids grow up. They need to grow up before they do any permanent changes to their body. Mike Johnson, that bill has passed through the Judiciary Committee. It is ready to go for a House floor vote. Johnson promised me a vote on it after the shutdown, and it has yet come to the floor.
So, two things. Number one, her bill was amended out the wazoo to get it to pass Judiciary. And by the way, the shutdown was like a month and a half ago. The idea that your bill needs to get out there right now, this exact second, we're not even out of 2025 yet. That's your big example of how you as a woman aren't taken seriously? That's it? A poorly written bill that had to be amended and scotch taped and retyped and rewritten and then sent back for spell check errors, then finally makes it to the Judiciary Committee, is corrected, and now is going to go to the House. Why would Mike Johnson not push that through right now? Gee, what's going on in the country right now? Oh, the Obama healthcare subsidies thing. So wouldn't it be nice if House leadership had this out of committee ready to go bill that they could then glue to a healthcare package and send it out for Republicans to then campaign on as a win in 2026? Or when the possible extensions on Obamacare are brought to the table, now it's a negotiation tactic. Okay, well, you really want Obamacare to be extended. Well, if you want Obamacare to be extended, Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill gets added on. No one thinks beyond their nose when it comes to whining about their gender in Congress, but that's the House of Representatives for you. It's not even particularly good theater. And rest in peace, Jerry Springer. I don't even think Jerry Springer's, dead. I hope he rests peacefully, because this kind of chaos and nonsense is nowhere near up to snuff. We're going to head to a quick break real quick for some bonus tonus this evening. Producer Nick assured me that he has filled the next segment with stuff that will hurt me and you. And apparently it has something to do with Sri Thanadar of Michigan. So it's going to hurt. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here at the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Thank you very much to producer Daniel for clarifying. The last of the three, James D. Maxwell II, the United States District Judge that got confirmed, the third out of three today in the U.S. Senate, is the Northern District of Mississippi. So thank you very much for that, producer Daniel. Now we get to what the old men are up to on the left side of the aisle. They're really, really mad about Pete Hegseth. They're still going with this. I will remind you, the polling data right now in the United States, overwhelming support for sinking narco-terrorist boats in the Caribbean. Overwhelming support. Supermajority status and then some. 75% of Americans and climbing. And Chuck Schumer, he's decided may have like a 0% approval rating, but he's ready. He's got it. Here we go. We're going to go after Hegseth.
Now, finally, this afternoon, Secretaries Hegseth and Rubio and top officials will brief the Gang of Eight, and I'll be there. I plan to confront Secretary Hegseth on exactly what the hell is going on in the Caribbean.
I do love where in his script there was like a little asterisk and then like get dramatic. He's like, I plan to ask Secretary Hegseth, what the hell is going on in the Caribbean? It's like a junior higher reading theater notes. It's really hilarious.
And to demand Secretary Hegseth give the total, unedited videos of what happened in the September 2nd boat strikes.
Look at Senator Robert Wyden behind him, just trying as hard as he can just to stay standing. That man looks like his soul was just removed in a Ghostbusters movie.
Trump originally agreed to do this, but now they're afraid. What's Hegseth hiding? And second, I will demand of Rubio and Hegseth what the hell is going on in the Caribbean.
I love this so much. They're going to drag him in, and Rubio is going to crack his knuckles menacingly, mutter a quick prayer in Spanish, and is then going to lay Chuck Schumer out in front of the entire country on C-SPAN 1. And it will be glorious. And you bet I will take that video, I will edit it, I will put the John Cena music over it, and just, we will play that in the show that evening. That will be fantastic. It's such political posturing. By the way, the videos in particular, they're so angry and so upset about it. Not even Democrats believe there's anything to it. Case in point, Nicole Wallace over on MSNBC, MS Now, has asked Chris Coons of Connecticut, well, hey, you know what's in this video? And he says it's not about the video.
When this story broke, when it burst into public view in the Washington Post report about the vessel being on fire from...
Excuse me, Chris Coons, Senator of Delaware, not Chris Coons, Representative of Connecticut. Sorry about that.
Bow to stern about two shipwrecked people. Many of the military experts that have been on this program pointed us and our viewers to the Law of War Manual, which has as its specific example of the line in the Law of War Manual being shipwrecked people. Is there anything in the video that makes that not more any less stark? I mean, these seem like, from Democrats and Republicans who've seen the video, say for Tom Cotton, shipwrecked people.
It certainly seemed that way to me. But, Nicole, what matters here is less what you see in the video than the analysis, the assumption.
Wait a minute. So it's not actually about the video. It's about what I think in my heart about the video. But Schumer says he needs the video to be declassified because only senators have seen. Wait a minute. Hold on a second here. Well, it's not about what's in the video. Yeah, that dog ain't gonna hunt. That has not stopped, and producer Nick has shared this with me. So I'm looking at this for the first time, as you all are. It's about Shri Tanadar. Oh my. Representative Shri Tanadar of Michigan, in his used car salesman toupee, he has announced he is officially introducing House Resolution 935. Sorry, it's hard to read from this distance from the monitor. Articles of impeachment against Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Okay. I love it. Al Green with his dastardly deeds. And then Shri Tanadar, who's just going to try to impeach anything he can. No reason. And just because we don't like Pete Hegseth. He blows up narco terrorists. We don't particularly like that on the Democrats' side of the House. So excellent stuff on that lane. Really doing great, guys. Never stop. This brings us to the Department of War and Southcom and the latest nothing of a scandal that is getting all of the left-wing ladies in the United States just reel up in a bunch. So a post by U.S. Southern Command shows an operator, later found out to be a Marine. It says U.S. military forces are deployed to the Southcom, the Southern Command area of responsibility in support of Operation Southern Spear. And it has a picture of the Marine, and on his helmet is a patch. And that patch is the Jerusalem cross. Now, I was in Jerusalem a couple months ago, and this cross is everywhere. It is a kind of a plus sign proportional cross. And then around it are four smaller crosses representing Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, there's also another interpretation of the cross on like the number of like traditional Christian cities. But Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Jerusalem cross, it is all over, especially the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, or as Protestants, we'd say the Church of the Resurrection, where Golgotha is. That particular cross that Pete Hegseth also had on a tattoo on his chest. So that's the scandal that now has the left up in arms. And I mean, they are so mad. They're saying, look, it's Nazi stuff, and they're pushing this religion on everybody, and it's breaking the First Amendment. These Christians. I mean, it's okay for me to get out there and shove all of the weird fetish crap in their face, but man, a cross, and they just short circuit immediately. They lose their minds. And just as quickly it came out, yeah, this is just a photo of a Marine standing on the deck of an aircraft carrier. No scandal. It was just an actual Marine. They photoshopped him. They didn't blur the patch on the side of his helmet because he's earned the right to say, yeah, I like the Jerusalem cross. I think it's cool. I'll be honest with you. I got that particular cross on a necklace while I was in Jerusalem. It's currently inside my house. It's nice. I like it. It's just a cross. You'll be okay. You won't burst into flames. Maybe some of you will burst into flames upon coming into contact with the cross, but you know, relax just a little bit. I mean, people are freaking out over the strikes on narco terrorists in the Caribbean for the most nothing of reasons, and it sounds bad. Normal Americans are not freaking out about this. Then you have people like Senator Rand Paul, who is just taking the aluminum foil and shoving it firmly onto his head.
By a code of conduct, and often we live by a higher standard than the rest of the world, but we can't go around just shooting people who are unarmed adrift in the ocean. It's a terrible thing. It's illegal.
Just they were unarmed, just adrift in the ocean. They were just out surfing, fishing. Now, due to yours truly making a particular social media short video over the week, and you know, looking through what eventually we'll talk about, the cartels are announcing they are hiring again on various social media platforms. Yes, the cartels of Central and South America, they do actually have Instagram and TikTok accounts. But his claim that these are just fishing boat innocent people adrift in the sea of life is not even remotely true. I've looked at a lot of footage of boats being blown up. Not a one of those. Is there any fishing gear in sight? No live well, no live tank. I don't know who's going fishing with like 36 drums stacked along the boat, just full of precursor chemicals that happen to be flammable. I always take my flammable precursor chemicals when I go bass fishing. You know, I as do we all. But anyway, Rand Paul's very mad.
And it's immoral.
Yeah, no, I understand that for sure. But Senator, are you questioning whether or not these were actually narco terrorists?
Nobody knows if they are because nobody's presenting any evidence.
That's just not true. You don't get to claim that we have the best military in the world and that you're really proud of them and there's so much that we can do, and then pretend that everyone who's working in the military intelligence services has the lens cap cover on. Guys, we have the cameras pointing at the coasts of Venezuela. We see the boats enter the water. A really good comment in the YouTube chat by Workaholic. He says, adrift in the ocean with 4 engines and 300 gallons of gas? Yeah, right. It doesn't take a military scholar with years of identifying aerial footage to crack this one. The selective degree of trust that libertarians bring to the table that isn't whining, the idea this is just going to convince Americans here. No, I'm afraid not, Chief.
Nobody knows if they're armed. Some of them in all likelihood are. But you know, when the Coast Guard picks people up, we've been doing this for 30 years. When the Coast Guard picks up boats off of Venezuela, which we have done historically, about 1 in 4 of the boats, maybe 1 in 5, don't have drugs.
Okay, a couple of things about that particular claim. First of all, we have not been picking people up off the coast of Venezuela 30 miles offshore. That is a lie. That is dishonest. Number 2, the idea that it is exactly the same as going out and... So let me put it this way. The longer a boat has from the point of shore to the point of interception, the more time there is for that boat to get lost. There are a number of islands. I don't know if you guys knew this. There's a number of islands in the Caribbean. Disney made a couple of movies about this. There's a number of islands sprinkled throughout that body of water. And these Venezuelan boats aren't just taking the same GPS route to Florida. I don't know if you knew that. And just kind of cool geographical facts here. And the longer that those boats are in the ocean, the harder it is to track them. Believe it or not, it's easier to track something on a definitive coast than to track a target moving throughout several points in the water over longer periods of time. It's the truth. It's why we have to replace certain kinds of measuring equipment, surveillance equipment, etc. So, first of all, he's wrong. Number two, the idea that sending the Coast Guard out every single time instead of a kinetic strike, again, we know based on the footage, and we've watched them at port. The idea they're all fishing boats, I will play this video. So the cartels are releasing additional videos again, and they have a new little hiring pitch that they've been sending to the rest of the world, which is that they are hiring again. So there was a series of videos that have been released by accounts that have now been banned and deleted, in which cartels show a bunch of footage of skimpy women loading drugs into bags, and then those boats and airplanes trafficking them and saying like, hey, we're hiring. Come work at the best office ever. And then those accounts got taken down and deleted. Well, they're starting to pop up again. And it's the context on the screen says we're hiring again. And you see these same kind of boats loaded down with the same kind of boxes and barrels that have been shown on these screens. Now, hold on a second. Does that look like they're fishing to you? You know, I always take my cellophane wrapped Amazon boxes out when I go fishing, you know, just in case any of the walleye in Brookville have Amazon Prime, you know. And then, you know, all of these other, you know, shots of planes flying and other nonsense cartel activity. Something that I did get a kick out of is that they have to say they're hiring again. And in case you're curious as to why they're hiring again, yeah, we actually do have the answer to that.
Taking the fight. Much like.
And the answer is that the United States has just blown every one of those particular boats out of the water. And surprisingly, a lot of these drugs have stopped coming into the United States. Kind of incredible. Sorry, I was looking for that particular clip of all of those boats blowing up. I think you can find that over on my X account on Instagram. But last but certainly not least, I've been looking forward to this one. The Venezuelan government has now started putting out pro-Venezuela military propaganda. Maduro's government, they're going to do what the Yemenis did, what the Iranians did, and they're saying, we're really tough with our military. We're strong. We're powerful. Here's the video. Again, I'm not going to try to describe this in detail. It's just a bunch of guys holding guns trying to look tough to music that's very poorly rapped Spanish for those who are listening. But here you go. So there we have a guy holding a Kalashnikov rifle. There we have a guy holding an M4 platform rifle in the front center. To the right, there's a guy holding a FAMAS bullpup style French rifle. There's the FAMAS. There's the British model that jammed more than any other rifle ever during the Gulf War. And then they're going to be jumping out of the helicopters into the water. A great place for a kinetic strike, by the way. Skydiving. So then they're showing their troops that are firing and what would look like an M4 and then a FAMAS. Yep, an M4, then a FAMAS, then a sidearm, then what looks to be like an M240, but like a knockoff Chinese version. That's a light machine gun. Then a rifle that zooming out looks like a very poor hunter's rifle modified to look military and cool as like a sniper rifle. Another Kalashnikov. Then a totally different assault rifle that from that angle looked like a Galil, the Israeli assault rifle. And then their little SOCOM special operator shot where there's yet a fifth kind of assault rifle. Why do I mention that? Why is that really funny to me? In a military, you have the same kind of rifle, or at the very least, you have the same kind of interchangeable magazines and ammunition. Because when you are in a firefight, The last thing that you need to be worried about is how much ammunition you have and whether the guy next to you, whether dead or alive, has a type of ammunition that you can quickly load into your firearm. You burn through ammunition really quickly in a firefight. A classic sign of a military that is deeply, deeply, deeply unprepared for any kind of engagement is if you see that. Either the guy's wearing a French flag, that shows that they're just not prepared at all for any situation because, you know, the French. Number two, if they are carrying a variety or a motley assortment of equipment. This is why, by the way, that the revolutionary second world and third world countries through the 80s to even today, you always see the Kalashnikov, the AK rifles, whether they're Chinese or Russian pattern rifles, because they all fire that traditional Russian or now Chinese cartridge. The magazines all fit. You can swap them out at length, swap out for parts, and you last longer in the field. The Venezuelan military just bragged that they are completely unprepared for any kind of military engagement whatsoever. Completely unprepared. So all of the wibbling and quabbling, oh man, we're Venezuela, they're terrifying. Oh, what are we going to do? Stupid. Just as stupid as those who are walking around making the claim that the United States is committing super duper evil war crimes while trying to tell me that this particular boat is just a couple of guys out fishing. Yes, excellent stuff. So with that, my moral of the day, don't be Shri Tanadar and file articles of impeachment that you know nothing about. Don't be Jasmine Crockett, Chuck Schumer. Don't be a Democrat. If you're John Fetterman and you're watching this, come on over. Jared Golden from up in Maine, come on over, bud. It's all right. Water's fine here. We have a lot of people disagreeing out in the open all the time. You got Bill Clinton populists arguing with traditional conservatives. You have Rand Paul who's yelling about something. We're not quite sure. Sounds like somebody ran over a cat with a Toyota Prius. You can come on over and argue. It's fun. Plus, we have more fireworks and firearms at the 4th of July, and all of ours are traditionally along the same caliber, unlike Venezuela's. That said, you guys have a wonderful evening. We'll be back tomorrow, same great time, same great place. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.